So we can, we're listening to hear if we hear a prohibited transaction, so we can steer you away from it. But it is the account holder's responsibility entirely not to commit a prohibited transaction.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast. I am your host, Marta Seslak, and I am very excited to have a very, very, very special guest with us today. Her name is Kaaren Hall, and she is the CEO of uDirect IRA, and we'll go into that in a second. But she comes to us with 20 years of experience in the mortgage banking, real estate, and property management industry, whereby she leveraged that experience to create her self-directed IRA company called uDirect IRA. And to date, she's helped guide tens of thousands of Americans through the process of diversifying their investments using self-directed IRAs. So very, very excited to get into that story. We love to hear, Kaaren, a little bit about you and your journey and what got you to where you are today.
Wonderful. Hey, Marta, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. This is really wonderful. Love to inspire people.
Yeah. So, Kaaren, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'd love to kind of pepper you with questions about your company, uDirect IRA.
Wonderful. Well, my background, my professional background, when I was in college, I was a radio announcer, and I did that. And then I actually got a job at a radio station, and I ended up being in radio for 17 years in Flagstaff and Phoenix and Seattle and where else? LA and Dallas and Las Vegas and all over. So I did that for a while. That was super fun, and that was nice while I was in my 20s and 30s. And then I decided I needed to make money. So I got into real estate, simultaneously. And then I started in mortgage loan servicing. And the reason I did was because I was a trailing spouse then. My then husband, my ex-husband, was getting promoted and transferred around the country. That's one of the reasons why I bounced around. And so when he would get a new position, well, that was something that I could do, and, mortgage loan servicing, and I did that in several states. So loved that. It was really fun. In fact, it's a lot like uDirect IRA. We're servicing accounts. That's what we did. And so that really gave me a lot of training. Then I got into mortgage loan origination 24 years ago when I moved to California. And that's where I am now. And that has been, then at mortgage loan origination it's a tough business. It's fun. And there's a lot of great things about it. And I learned so much, just grew so much as a professional through that. And then we had the recession. I'm sure you remember, we all have this painful memory in our hearts about the recession.
Oh, yeah.
If you're older than like 18, and right. And so during the recession, I needed a job, a real job. And so I asked a friend of mine, she goes, well, I know these people that are starting a self-directed IRA office in Orange County, California, which is where I live. And so she recommended me, and they hired me, and they said, we want you to open 50 accounts a quarter. And I said, yay, I could do that. I opened 50 accounts a month, and thought and then after a couple of years of doing that, I opened uDirect IRA Services. So that was in 2009. And wow, what a great time to start a company doing what we do, And the reason is because in 2009, nobody really knew what a self-directed IRA was. And we filled this niche of what was desperately needed in the market, and that was capital. In those times, you couldn't get a loan from banks. Banks were really tight on lending, and normally you can have 10 investment properties, still get a mortgage. It was down to 6. And anyway, money was tight. And that's when people discovered, I think, really self-directed IRAs, because wow, like today it's a $40 trillion pool of funds, not just IRAs. I mean, all retirement together equals about 40 trillion. And you can use that money for your deal. So people found this out, the investor community, the real estate investor community found out, and it was a great time. It was a really great time to start this company.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me the connection between what you were doing prior to self-directed IRAs and then this transition into the self-directed IRA world.
Yeah, well, right. So with self-directed IRAs, I mean, it's sales. So we do sales. And so I was also, with my radio background, being able to present, I was able to go out and do public speaking. And you don't sell someone a self-directed IRA. It's not like, oh, you wake up in the morning, I need to self-direct today. It's not like you just teach people, hey, here's a tool you can use if you need it. We provided a great service, low fees kind of thing. But there was, especially in 2009, such a thirst for education. So so those skills worked in perfectly well. And then when people were bringing their deals to us, everyone I hire pretty much has a background in real estate of some sort. So they understand the underlying asset. They understand the jargon. They understand the timing and usually the urgency that exists in real estate investing. And even though we have different kinds of assets, almost like 90% are tied to real estate, I would say. So we have a staff that has that knowledge. And so my knowledge of mortgage lending, by the way, I'd been a realtor. I'd done property management as well during that time, during the whole mix. And I even had an insurance license, a life and health license, or I did at the time. Obviously, I'm doing this and not that. So I was able to learn a lot about financial services, and everything comes into, customer service, sales, product awareness, and just being helpful and knowing how to get things done.
Yeah. Awesome. So you started this self-directed IRA company, and you're just knocking it out of the park in the first month. Okay. And then what goes through your head whereby, that transitions you into being an entrepreneur? I'm so curious to understand, what went on in your head when you were like, I'm going to do this on my own.
Well, I mean, the fact I got fired,
Okay.
Even though I was doing a great job. And I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. I'm the oldest, and I like to take charge of things. And so I think, am I bossy? Yeah. And now I get to do it for a living. So it helps, it's one of my skills. I think I've always been an entrepreneur, and the ability to do this on my own and having the skills, it's crazy how it all came together at the same time. But every one of the skills I've ever cultivated has resulted in the skills that I use. In fact, when I was very, very first out of college, or maybe it was even, in the summers in between, I worked for a CPA firm. And I was 23, 24. I would do secretarial work, for a CPA. And so I learned a lot of the jargon. I learned about tax extensions. I learned a lot about tax at that time. So even that background, and also I learned how to file things. And I mean, literally everything I've ever done goes into being a self-directed IRA administrator. It really does.
Huh. That's so interesting. Tell me, when you were making the transition from working for someone to working for yourself, what were some of those, I guess, did you have any fears of going off on your own, or was it just super natural to make that leap?
Oh yeah. I mean, yes. And to double on that one, yes, it's scary. I mean, it's the burn all the ships sort of thing, right? I mean, the only way to go is forward, because you don't have anything back here. It was a recession. I couldn't get a job in the mortgage industry during the mortgage meltdown. I couldn't get a job in real estate because, it was a mess, right? the subprime meltdown, and it was nuts. And I live in Orange County, not Los Angeles, so there are no radio jobs in Orange County. So I really had no way forward but this. I thought, well, okay, I can make this happen. And I had cultivated enough relationships that, and when people found out that I was fired, a lot of people came to my aid. And it's like, oh, Kaaren, come here, we'll help you. Come speak to our group. And I had a lot of loving and awesome support from amazing people. Thank goodness for those great, great people who were so kind. And I spoke at a lot of real estate investment clubs. And it just was like a snowball. At first, I opened one account and I had $50. Like, wow, I have $50. And then, seriously, I mean, you start small, but it just all lined up that was okay at the time. And I had other things that, that I was, like unemployment and blah, blah, blah. That was nuts. I mean, that first time was, there was no firm ground under my feet. But I'll tell you what, nothing gets you moving than the need to make things happen. Because at the same time, I have 2 children. And so I have 2 children and a mortgage. And this has got to happen. So there was no stopping me. And for a solid 10 years, I went to all the real estate investment clubs in Southern California regularly. And I'm friends with the people who own those, and run those groups. And just pushed and worked really hard. One of the things I love doing too is the networking party. So just a lot of networking and just everything I could think of, I would do.
Yeah, awesome. What do you think mostly contributed to your success in going out and doing your own endeavor?
I mean, at first it was just the need to support my family, right? But I really enjoy it. I mean, I am kind of like an introverted extrovert. I really love being around people. And the thing I really love is saying, hey, Marta, I have this friend. You should meet my friend. And then because you do this and they do that. And I love putting people together. And I've always been good at that. And so that is another reason why I like going out and networking and introducing people to one another where there's synergy. And so that's just something I've always enjoyed. And so I do that quite a bit. In fact, we're having, we always have events. So if you look on the uDirect website, our calendar, we have events from time to time that are outdoor networking kinds of things in Orange County.
Very cool. And I can attest to that, actually, because I met you at the Bigger Pockets conference, and I wasn't really necessarily feeling going out to a nightclub, but we sparked a conversation at the bar, and the rest is history. We ended up
we kept bumping into each other, like in the line and in the hallway and then in the elevator, and then you were sitting at the bar. It's like, hey, let's be friends. So that worked out great. That was fun.
I had such a fun time chatting with you. So yeah, I can tell you're a really great networker and connector of folks. Awesome. I do want to back up actually, because I'm not sure that everyone knows what a self-directed IRA is, and I myself am learning about self-directed IRAs, and I can share more about that in a second. But I do want you to share with us, what is a self-directed IRA? How does it work? And when would someone need to use one?
Well, first off, there's an IRA, an individual retirement arrangement. And by the way, I'm sorry if it's just really dark here. Sorry, I'm kind of in a cave, my office. But anyways, are we good? All right. Well, an IRA is an IRA. And so that's called an individual retirement arrangement. And IRAs were formed in 1975 when then President Gerald Ford signed the ERISA law into effect. The Employment Retirement Income Security Act, 1975, created IRAs. So ever since IRAs have existed, you've been able to self-direct them. Self-directed IRAs aren't different than regular IRAs. It's the same thing. But what differs is the kind of asset you can put in it. So for a typical IRA that's done by handled by a financial advisor who's got a license, they're not licensed to represent you investing in alternative assets. That's not their area of specialty. A self-directed IRA is an alternative asset, and it's self-directed because you, in this case, are coming in as the asset specialist. You're saying, this is what I want to invest in. We're not advising you We're telling you what's best for you. You're coming in with this alternative asset, and we help you take it, use your retirement dollars to acquire it. Like I know, Marta, you know a lot about real estate. So getting into real estate using an IRA would be perfect for you because you understand how it works. And who has never, lived in a dwelling? We've all lived in a, in a dwelling. And this is the most normal thing to everybody. And when you can find deals and you can take them down with a self-directed IRA, that's great. Now, sometimes another way to do this too, tell me if I'm getting off topic here, but another way to do this with the self-directed IRA is to get into private equity. It's also called Reg D offerings, private placements, private equity. What else is it called? Even crowdfunding, Reg A, B, C, and D. These kind of SEC approved kinds of offerings. Those are usually a way to raise capital to acquire real estate. So your IRA or solo 401k could be an equity or debt partner in a situation like that. Your IRA could make a loan, or your IRA could become an equity partner in a deal like that if you're an accredited investor. So that's another way that IRAs get involved in real estate without actually owning brick and mortar.
Yeah. And so to that point, I think a few years back when I was not exploring or learning about real estate, how it all worked, and was not connected to some really great operators out there that put together these real estate funds that you can invest in, there's no way I would have ever considered, a self-directed IRA. But now that I know more, I have a better understanding. I trust some of the operators that I've been kind of researching for a while now, watching their deals go full cycle and understand their distributions, etc. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready for a self-directed IRA because I can make my own choices on what to invest in, and I feel comfortable with that, right? Because you guys actually don't advise your clients on the types of investments where you put your money into, right? You're just essentially holding this bucket of money and then deploying it to wherever your clients tell you to.
Exactly. It's sort of like when you go to buy a house and you go to escrow. Escrow doesn't tell you if you bought a good or bad house. They don't tell you how to write off the house on your taxes. You just give them a house, they go, great, and they move it from where it is owned by somebody else to owned by you. And that's kind of what we do too in the self-directed IRA world. We administrate just like an escrow company would administrate a deal, getting the money from here to there. And so you go from not owning it to owning it. Now, of course, we don't provide any documentation or contracts like an escrow company might. But we do, review the deal, not to see if it's a good investment, but to make sure that we're going to give it a cursory look to see if there's a prohibited transaction. So we probably should talk about that if you like.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah. Prohibited transaction. So with self-directed IRAs, you just have to realize straight up, it's not like investing your private money. When you're investing your own private money, you can invest with anybody, in any time, and that's fine. When it's IRA money, there are some rules. And it's really a game of keep away. It's not really what to do, it's more like what not to do. And you want to keep away from prohibited transactions, which basically means keep the deal arm's length, okay? Arm's length from disallowed people, your lineal ascendants and descendants, parents and grandparents, yourself and your spouse, and your children and your grandchildren and their spouses disallowed to the IRA. But, certain family members are not disallowed, like your brothers and sisters and your aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews. They can work with your deal. And I'll explain what that looks like. Also, a prohibited transaction is if one of these disallowed people, including yourself, offers services to the plan. So if you want to say, hey, my dad has this great private equity offering and I want to in my IRA to invest in that, can't do it. Your father has a controlling interest in this asset. Your father's a disallowed person. Therefore, your IRA investing in your dad's deal would be disallowed and would be prohibited, okay? And so your IRA does not, you don't like buy a house from your parents. You don't sell a house to your kids. You don't live in the house your IRA owns. You can't have any personal use. There's no personal benefit, even indirect benefit. And what that is you don't take your IRA money, put it in your LLC, and then have your LLC give you the money. If you can't do it directly, you can't do it indirectly. So,
that is
all right, there's a rule. So what happens?
yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea.
Yeah. So if you commit a prohibited transaction, like what happens? First off, it's not common for the IRS to really call you on a prohibited transaction. In my 15 plus years of experience, I have to count the years, it's around there. I've only seen maybe a handful of real prohibited transactions where the IRS was involved. But a lot of times if we see a prohibited transaction, we'll say, hey, look, before you fund the deal, if we see it's prohibited, we'll tell you. But the onus is on the account holder to make sure they don't commit a prohibited transaction. But hey, a lot of the account holders like you, they don't know what that is. So that's why we offer at least a 20-minute consultation for everyone. Hey, talk to us, tell us about your deal, who are the principals, who's involved, who's going to, if it's real estate, who's going to live there, who's going to control it. So we can, we're listening to hear if we hear a prohibited transaction, so we can steer you away from it. But it is the account holder's responsibility entirely not to commit a prohibited transaction.
Interesting. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
To that point, I'm curious, when people are evaluating self-directed IRAs, what should they be looking out for and asking questions around? I mean, does every self-directed IRA provide that 20-minute consultation on your investment, or is that very typical to your company? Can you share a little bit more about what to look out for?
I think any self-directed IRA company would talk to you. I mean, but the complaints I hear about other companies is the large companies, maybe that they have to wait online or they don't get to talk to the same person twice. And we're a great kind of size where we assign a transaction coordinator to every person once the deal is going. So you're talking to the same person throughout the whole deal. There's nothing like getting into a deal and then having to start from scratch and explain it to a brand new person from this is what happened and this is where we are, So we have this, but yes, I mean, I think all self-directed IRA companies will talk to you, but our fees are very low. We have a $50 setup fee. If I can do a little commercial, we have a $275 flat fee. And that's annual, regardless of the number of assets, regardless of their value. So it's not like a flat fee plus an add-on if you have a note, nothing like that. It's a flat fee. And our fees are just incredibly reasonable. And we have just under $1 billion under management. So we have self-directed, we've helped quite a number of people self-direct, thousands.
Very cool. Yeah, there's a uDirect IRA is on, I want to say Investopedia. And there's a little comparison chart, and you guys by far come in, I want to say the lowest with all the fees, which is great.
I mean, we believe our account holders deserve more of their return on investment. And while we're still, with thousands of accounts, we're doing fine.
Yeah, amazing. What other aspects of a self-directed IRA are important to think about when you're first starting out with a company?
I think any company that I know of is probably reputable. So I think, but you just want to Google them first. I would say anything you do goes to due diligence. But and that's really the tip of the iceberg about what you should do when you have a self-directed IRA. The biggest thing you need to do is you need to do the due diligence on your asset. Like we were just talking about private equity, right? So with private equity, search the names of the asset sponsors. Now, there are sites like FINRA, FINRA, which is the enforcement arm of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. So FINRA, the SEC, and then NASA, National Association of State something. It's like NASA with an extra A. And even AARP, they all have, you can go on their site and they have ways to search for bad actors in the securities world, which would be, high dollar notes and like Reg A, B, C, and D offerings. So you want to make sure in private equity that your asset sponsor is legit. We had one account holder open an account, a huge account for an IRA, because the contribution limits limit how much you can put in. She was going to invest in, get this, in real estate and make a $500,000 unsecured note on real estate. No. So first off, a note that big should be, should be registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission in the state, wasn't, but she didn't do her due diligence. If she would have gone online, Googled those people's name, she would have seen there were two guys involved in this. She would have seen that one of them was actually jailed, like incarcerated, for stealing millions of dollars from investors. So it is so when you've got the internet, my gosh, you've got like the oracle of all human knowledge. Just look it up, You want to so do at least that for yourself. But really the number one thing is due diligence. So you get into a private equity deal. And then what you want to do, your due diligence doesn't stop. You want to make sure that you understand that agreement enough to know that, are they performing as they promised? Are they being audited? Do they have audited financials? Can you view those audited financials? Make sure that if it says the name of a big four, accounting firm that's doing their auditing, call that big four auditing firm and say, hey, I just want to make sure you really did this audit. Little due diligence tips like that can prevent you from, or at least give you a red flag if you're involved in a Ponzi, which is robbing Peter to pay Paul. You take the new money and use it to pay the existing clients. That happens a lot in private equity, but it only happens, people don't usually start off wanting to do that. That's something that usually happens because, I don't know, of pride or something like that. But that does happen. So you need to make sure that you're investing with reputable people.
Right. Yep. And that due diligence is so key. I have a question for you about another type of investment that might be appropriate for a self-directed IRA, and that's a business acquisition. Can you say a little bit more about that investing path?
Yes, I would not use a self-directed IRA to invest in a business that I want to own. I wouldn't do that because, one, I own the business, so I'm disallowed to the IRA, so I wouldn't be able to operate it or go there or use the services. I could only hire third parties to run it for me. It would have to be arm's length, and that's not very attractive to any entrepreneur. And also, if my IRA were to invest in an active business, I would owe a special tax called UBIT, unrelated business income tax. So that is not usually a path that people go down to invest in their own companies. But like you tell me, hey, I'm opening a company. I think, oh, great. I know Marta. I love her. And so, and I read your prospectus and I read your business plan. I think that sounds good. And if I wanted to invest, my IRA could invest in your business as a debt or equity partner. Right?
Gotcha.
And then your business would pay my IRA the agreed return.
Gotcha.
Kind of a grassroots way of helping each other with our businesses and building things up.
Yeah. Very cool. And then last question on self-directed IRAs here. What are your thoughts on when to put the money into the account? So let's say you're still exploring the exact investment or waiting for the investment to come up. In terms of timing, do you put the money in, just let it sit there until you're ready to deploy it? Or how do you think about the timing of all of that?
Usually, I believe that you should open the account and fund it. So when you find a deal, you can pull the trigger and you don't have to wait 2 weeks for a third party to get your money over. I don't know if anyone can time the market because we really don't have a crystal ball. And market goes up and down every day. It's a real roller coaster. But I know that in 2008, we had a lot of account holders who were super glad they had their money sitting as idle cash in a self-directed IRA, and they didn't just lose 40% in the market. So that happens too. So it's entirely up to the individual and their individual sense of what they want to do. But I think if you want to use a self-directed IRA to acquire an asset and you're in the business of looking for that asset, if you want to be able to jump on it when it comes to you, your account should be funded to avoid delays.
Gotcha. That's very helpful. Awesome. Well, any key lessons that you want to share with the listeners here about really anything, business, life in general, professional, personal, anything?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing about being an entrepreneur is it's kind of lonely because in the sense that like here I've got a staff of people, but when there are issues that I am struggling with regarding the business, I need to understand something or, just having a challenge, I'm not really going to go to my employees and discuss that challenge, right? So what's really always helped me is being involved in a mastermind. So for years I was in Vistage. Now I'm in another kind of CEO group called Convene, and talking to other CEOs who have similar, and it turns out all businesses are the same because it all boils down to working with people, and it all seems to boil down to people skills. But like I can go into one of these mastermind meetings thinking I have a huge problem, and somebody will sit there telling me they'll tell us about their problem. It's like, wow, I have no problem at all. Like I'll take my problems any day, and you can provide help and support to other people, and they help provide help and support to you. And you just put things in perspective, and you start to realize that being an entrepreneur is a wild ride. It's and you're in charge. And so the buck stops with you. And that's a place where I feel comfortable. And I especially enjoy having peers who also enjoy that, have been going through the journey, and people who've been doing this longer than I have, people that haven't been doing this as long as I have advice and experience to share that's super helpful. So I think getting into a peer group is really one of the pillars of strength for my business.
Gosh, yeah, that's so key, right? Is surrounding yourself with people that can help to support you in the place where you're at, right? And so huge. If you don't mind me asking, what's next for Kaaren Hall and IRA?
Well, these IRAs won't direct themselves, so I better stick around, right? No, that's my favorite joke. No, I mean, obviously I'm just a young pup, right? No, one day I'll retire, but that day isn't today. That day is in the long distant horizon. But in the meantime, I have built my staff up, over 14 years to have the ability to get away from time to time and do things like go speak at GoBundance, where I met you, and I'll be at GoBundance in Orlando coming up 2023 in October. So that's exciting. And it gives me the ability to travel and to do things like that. But I don't have any other plan. I mean, what's next? It's this, this is what I do. Awesome.
And then is there anything that you need from the audience? And if you have, what's the best way to contact you and get in touch with you?
Right. Well, I mean, what I have is a need to help people who want to self-direct their retirement accounts, and they want to invest in alternative assets. That's the thing that we do, all day long. And if you've got questions, we're here to answer the questions. And so we're here to be of service, right? And if you want to reach us, you can get us at info@uDirect, here above my head, uDirectIRA.com. So the letter U, uDirectIRA.com. And we're very happy to help.
Awesome. Well, this has been so insightful and amazing to speak with you today, Kaaren. You're just a wealth of information in this space. And for anyone that is considering doing investing through a self-directed IRA, I highly recommend connecting with Kaaren. And thank you for being the sort of like the connector of all connectors, and always thinking about how people can help each other. I really appreciate that. So thank you again for being on the show, and best of luck in the future here. And thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.